Hello and welcome back to OmegaCodex, where I make tech simple, practical and fun. If you have ever wondered and are eager to elevate your .NET Core projects with Docker, all within the Azure DevOps ecosystem, this would be the right video. Today, we are diving into the world of Azure DevOps to show you how to create a Docker build and push it seamlessly to a container registry, an Azure Container Registry to be precise, all through the power of Azure DevOps YAML pipelines. For those of you who might be stepping into the world of Docker or YAML pipelines for the first time, you can check out these videos, which includes how to create a Docker enabled project in Visual Studio as well as a primer on YAML pipelines. It will provide you with a solid foundation to follow along with ease. You can find the links to these videos in the description box below. So, without further ado, let's dive into the world of Docker deployments with Azure DevOps. Let's get started. Welcome back. So what I have here is a .NET Core project which has Docker enabled, and if you open the app, we can see there is a Docker file. So Docker file is nothing but a text file which contains a series of commands which is used to build the image. So it's essentially the build instructions to build and create the image. So if you have watched my previous video on Docker with Visual Studio, then I have explained there in detail about what all these instructions mean and how the image is created. So in this video, we'll not go into the details of this. We'll just go ahead and create our pipeline. So for that, let's come to the pipeline and click on create pipeline. We'll select a repository and let's just click on start a pipeline. Visual Studio or Azure DevOps also gives you templates, but let's start from a bare minimum one to understand it better. So it just created a starter template for us where our trigger point is master. So whenever there is a commit to the master branch, the build would get triggered. The agent pool which we are using is Ubuntu latest. So this is a Microsoft hosted agent. So my videos on Azure DevOps and pipelines explains more about what an agent pool is and what are the different kinds of agent pools. So this one is a Microsoft hosted agent where Microsoft takes care of the infrastructure and the agents to be used. We just have to specify the type of image we want to use. After that, let's remove other items. We don't need them, and we just add variables, and we will call it tag, and for tag we will use build.buildID. Okay, now let's go ahead with stages, and we want to call this stage as build. We'll have a display name for it. Let's call it build image, and a stage will have jobs. So our first job is to build. We'll have a display name for this as well as build, and we'll have steps. And let's click on this show assistant, search for Docker, select this Docker task, and we'll need a container registry to set up the pipeline. So for that, let's open in a new page the project settings, and we have to create a service connection from Azure DevOps to Azure Container Registry. So that's the registry which we are using in this video. So first, let's create a container registry. We'll come to Azure portal, portal.azure.com. We can search for container registry. So let's create a container registry. So I've selected my subscription. I'll select a resource group. So I'll just use one of the existing ones. I'll call it OCSD container registry. Okay, region, let's select Central India. Pricing plan, let's not bother about it right now. We'll use just the standard one and create. So let's give it a few seconds to create the registry. So our container registry is created, and let's come back to service connection. In Azure DevOps, click on this new service connection. So in the list of services, you will find Docker registry. Let's select that. And it gives you option to work with Docker Hub on either registries or Azure Container Registry. So we'll select Azure Container Registry, select the authentication type as service principal. Now from the list of container registries, we can select the one which we created just now. We'll call Azure Container Registry. We'll grant access to all pipelines so that it is accessible in all pipelines. Otherwise, you have to give permissions when you are using it in a pipeline. So to keep it simple, let's just grant access to all pipelines. Give it a few seconds to set up the connection, and it is done. So now let's come to our new pipelines and search for the Docker task again. So now you can see the new connection which we created, and we can give a repository name. So for repository name, let's call it Docker Web App. Command, you can also use build and push in one shot. So I'm just keeping it separate to demonstrate it. And let's do an add. Let's just adjust this tab. So command is build, registry set, repository set. Now in the Docker file command, let's change it to an absolute location. So under the build sources directory, Docker .NET Docker app. So this is the path where our Docker file is placed, and it's better to specify the exact path. Otherwise, sometimes it has issues in finding it. And for build context, we'll add one more property called build context, and here we will just put this path as build context so that it is built under this folder. And tags, we can specify the variable which we mentioned earlier. That's the tag which we want to put to this build. So with this, our build step is complete. Now what we want to do next is to push. So let's add a new task, and it will be the same Docker 2 task. We'll have inputs, and our container registry will be still same. Repository also will be same. Command you want to use is push, and tags, it's still the tag. Okay, you don't have multi-line, so we'll do the same thing here, and that's it. I think we are good to go. So let's just save, commit directly to master branch. So this is a YAML file, so it will be part of your repository, and that's the difference between a classic pipeline or a YAML pipeline in Azure DevOps. So it's committed. Yeah, in an ideal scenario, probably you should commit it to a branch, have it reviewed, and then merge it to master. But for keeping it simple, I'm just committing it directly to master. And it has started the build. So let's check how it goes. So let's give it a few seconds. So it has already built the image. Now it is pushing it to the repository, and it's done. Now let's come to our container registry, and here under repositories, you can come and check if the image is available here. So the repository name which we gave in our pipeline, if you remember, was Docker Web App. And you can see that we have the build number as, or the build ID as the tag. So this way we have built the image and pushed it to a container registry. So we'll discuss in a separate video how we can deploy this image to an Azure app service. You could also use it directly here, though it's probably to test it out. You can do that. You can create an app service and a web app. So in Azure App Service or Web Apps, you have an option called as Web App for Containers. So if you create a web app, say we use the same resource group, let's call it, and in the publish, select Docker container, and we can choose operating system as Linux, region, let's keep it Central India. For now, let's keep it B1. We don't have database. So here it's a single container. Instead of quick start, I can choose container registry, and I can choose the registry name. Okay, so our registry doesn't have an admin account, and that is something we have to set up. So we can come here and select access keys and select an admin user. So after that, if we select, now it is able to access the Docker app. And if you have a startup command, for example, if it's a Node.js application, usually you would have a startup command. For .NET Core, you don't need it. And you can click next. Let's keep rest of the things default and review and create it. So now if you create, you will have an app which uses the Docker container. Let's go to the resource, and if we click on this, it should load the app. So here in the web app properties, you can see that it is a container based publishing model, and the container image it is using is specified here. And if you come to deployment center, you can find the sources container registry, and this is the tags used. If you have more versions, you can appropriately change the tag also and use a specific image on your server. Now if you deploy it from your pipelines, then the setting gets selected and the settings are updated accordingly. Probably we'll look into it in another video. So this is the app. It is up and running, and if you come and see the connection string, so this is the default connection string. This is the test connection string which is there, and it is also loaded on the screen from there. So we'll in subsequent videos we can also see on how to play around with the settings and apply it on the image. And there you have it. You have just learned how to streamline your .NET Core project deployment using Docker and Azure DevOps YAML pipelines. I hope this guide has demystified the process and shown you just how accessible and powerful these tools can be. Remember, practice makes perfect, so don't hesitate to experiment with your own projects. You can also find the source code to this project in the description box below. If you have found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your peers, and consider subscribing to the channel for more tech insights and tutorials. Have a question or want to share your experience? Drop a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, keep coding smart and keep innovating. Adios.